Hey guys, making another video today. Today is Sunday, November 2nd. Was unsure what topic to make the video about today, but I think I'll go with a more simpler one and give the other one I was thinking about some more time to think on how to make a video about it. But today's topic that I want to go over is a verse in James. I believe it was James 1:26, if I remember that number correctly, where it says, those who consider themselves religious, yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongue, deceive themselves, for their religion is worthless. One of the biggest things that a lot of people, at least that I see on social media, and obviously I've said the only social media I have is YouTube, but still, a lot of things that I see just scrolling by randomly on YouTube is, young men who are, or I guess young people, not just men, who, consider themselves religious, might wear a cross chain, might go to church, might whatever, yet they just say whatever they want. A whole lot of cursing, a whole lot of tearing other people down for laughs, a lot of taking God's name in vain without any sort of having their conscience stricken, as David would call it. I can't remember entirely where David said that. I just know that I don't know if it's somewhere in Samuel or in Psalms, David did something and said he was conscience stricken for it. It's just that I see more and more Christians just casually taking God's name in vain, not caring, laughing about it, just making it part of the lingo, the way this, and including it in sentences they speak, maybe for dramatic added effect or for funny added effect to whatever they're saying. And it's not just that, as I said, it's also tearing each other down, saying things that are divisive on purpose, being hateful, saying things out of anger that we shouldn't. We have our tongue to speak, to build others up, not to bring them down. I know that's not easy, especially if, family or friends, at some points are going to frustrate you. It's life, it happens to everyone. But what Jesus says is for us to look at people as he did, with love and compassion to the point of death. Not love and compassion up until they annoy me a little bit and I just cuss them out. One of the problems of today's age is this. Just saying the wildest things for attention. A lot of people on YouTube, biggest people on YouTube nowadays and on social media, gain a following by just, I think the term is grifting, I believe. I can't remember. It's a term that basically means someone who gains an audience by just saying stupid stuff on purpose that they know is wrong, but will gain attention. And it's stuff like, what's his name? Andrew Tate, and guys like him, they'll just say crazy random stuff because they know people eat it up, or whether they disagree or agree, people eat it up, give them attention, and by that attention, they earn money. The reason I highlight that is because Sometimes people just say random crap that they shouldn't for money. Obviously, that is not keeping a tight rein on your tongue. Being like, if you're nowadays something like a streamer, I don't know, on the news, on some sort of social media thing, as a Christian, you shouldn't be saying things that are bad just for clicks or for people watching you, for attention, or for whatever. And a lot of people do that. And obviously, God says that's wrong. And in, I keep remembering quotes that David wrote in my head. And one of the ones that came up was, "Their throats are open graves." You know, one of the things that will quickly bring you down is what you say, both out loud and what you allow to speak from your heart into your mind, and let it rain. Sorry, to explain that better, things that you allow out of your heart, that you think about in your mind, that you just kind of let go and don't care about. That goes along with one of the other videos I made earlier, which was taking sin more seriously. But yeah, I was also reading earlier in Ezekiel, God prophesying destruction against Egypt. And one of the things God said was, "Pharaoh, you have said, I created the Nile and it is mine." And God said, for this, obvious lie and can't think of the word, pride and arrogance, after all God has given to the Egyptian people and done for them and their ancestors, and for Pharaoh to have in his heart to say this and act like that, God will relent and let Babylon destroy them, basically. So words can have and carry very powerful consequences. It can also be the lack of words. As you know, in Acts, the king, I can't remember which of the kings there's so many Herods around that time. I can't remember which one it was. The people were praising him, and God, instead, because Herod didn't speak out and give praise to God and accepted praise from people as being a god, God struck him down and worms ate his body. So it could also be what you're not saying, though what you're not saying is definitely a bit more things where it's praising God, or maybe it's not sharing the gospel with someone when you should. Obviously, most of us aren't going to go through some sort of situation where we're a king or something, or a president or of a country, or maybe CEO of a company. Obviously, most of us aren't going to go through that sort of experience, but still. Words have very, very mighty consequences. So think more about, especially, because one of the things that made me think about this video was playing games earlier. I realized one of the things that tempts me the most is to go along with what the guys random people that I play with. Oftentimes the people that talk in games are men, not women. Oftentimes they make jokes a lot while just playing, and obviously there's a lot of crude jokes in there, and it's very tempting for me to just laugh and go along with it and say something crude myself to get more laughs from them. And this isn't just in the gaming environment, this is also if you were to go to a bar or, I don't know, work. It can be very easy and tempting by other people around you, whatever whatever situation you're in to go along with evil speech and just things you shouldn't say to fit in and to get laughs or approval. You know, I can't, obviously you probably know what I was trying to talk about when I said cruel jokes, because Paul said not to have nothing to do with crude, I can't remember exactly what he said, crude jokes or something like that. I've been flipping around everywhere in the New Testament and like the specific chapters and stuff and which quote comes from which of Paul's letters kind of elude me right now. But yeah, words carry a lot of weight. Words have the power of life and death in them. God tells us to love each other. Obviously, Jesus says the sum of the law and the prophets is to love your neighbor as yourself. And even before that, love the Lord your God. That is the sum of the law and the prophets. If we are to love one another, we are to use our mouth to build up each other, to love one another. But it's not just that, it's remaining holy and sanctified by just speaking normally as a Christian should, but not giving into desires usually born out of, at least in, today's society, which is born out of, wanting to fit in socially. Or, to gain some sort of upper hand in some way over someone else in an argument. You might say something that you shouldn't. And it might not even be the words you say, it could be how you say it. Or if you're in an argument with someone, it could be shouting at them, up in their face screaming or something like that. The basic gist, as James put it, keep a tight rein on your tongue. Actually think about what you're going to say. We humans have a very large tendency to just spit out what we're thinking immediately without thinking. And because we're sinful, some things are going to come out that aren't good. So it's important for us as Christians to actually think about what we're going to say instead of just spewing everything that comes to mind. I can't say, for me, like the coworker scenario that I gave or something like that doesn't apply to me because I work remotely. So I can't go deeper into that. But I know that you can have coworkers who make dirty jokes or talk about or speak in ways that they shouldn't. And it can be very tempting to go along with that just to fit in. Because the want to fit in is universal. It's not just at work. But you need to remain holy. Know that, as Paul says, you are God's, quote unquote, as the Holy Spirit lives within us, and we are a temple. And I don't think back in ancient times when they were still under the law, and that is how God acted, was through his temple and the law. I don't think the priests were going around spewing words like sailors, just cursing a bunch and saying a bunch of terrible things. I very much doubt they were doing anything like that in fear of God. So how much more now that we have the Spirit inside of us, that we should uphold what is good and righteous in our hearts, up and out of our mouths. I hope everyone has a good day, night, and a good start to the week tomorrow.